So Industry Insider is a new format that we launched this year, and it's to provide real learnings and insights from leading industry companies. We want to present the latest trends and best practices from across the industry. So far this year, we've tackled brand safety with GroupM, we've looked at the latest consumer research for AVOD with Rakuten, and quite recently, we discussed CTV advertising with Xandr. So today, I'm very delighted to discuss creator marketing and welcome one of IAB Europe's newest member companies, TikTok. So let's take a look at the agenda of what will be discussed over the next 45 minutes. So first up, we have Stuart Flint, also known as Flinty, who, this is a name he's just told me that his parents give him, that will be doing a TikTok 101 presentation. And within this, he'll be looking at their mission of inspiring creativity and joy. He'll be given an overview of some of their ad products with some great case studies, and most importantly, sharing some insider tips and tricks on how to TikTok. Full disclosure, during lockdown, I joined TikTok. Haven't yet produced my own video, but I'm very inspired. Stuart will then hand over to Cormac, who is TikTok's head of trust and safety. And he will be detailing the steps the team are taking to ensure the safety of their users and brands. After both presentations, we will then have a panel discussion, and it will be your chance to ask any questions. So you can see on the interface, we've got a Q&A box, so you can put your questions in there, or you can put them into the chat box. And because this is, with all of our sessions, this is a live event, we encourage you to post questions. The event is being recorded so that if anyone misses it, we can share it with them afterwards. So I'm going to hand over now, and we will just play a little intro before it goes over to Flinty.
Down south, hood baby, make all the girls go crazy, go crazy.
Go stupid. You smart like an A+ student. Up, down, right down, looking for your love right now. La 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 la. Up, down, all around, turn my stomach upside down. It goes something like la 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 la.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thanks for the intro. How wonderful. Yes, my parents, I was going again. I love working from home. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll do a bit more of a formal intro in a moment, but I think truly it really does start on TikTok. I think it's safe to say, I think especially during this really terrible pandemic that we've all been working through, we have certainly seen an increase in the audience and the diversity, I think, of the audience, as well as the diversity of content, but more of that a bit later on. So by starting to, that was a campaign that you've seen we've just launched. That was a marketing campaign we just launched right across Europe, including Germany and the UK, and you saw the British version there. It's a really, the idea is to stimulate a fresh and authentic idea of what TikTok is. Whether it's a new dance fascination, whether it's showing your pets off, or whether it's discovering something new, an educational piece on TikTok, then it really does start here. And so we've really developed this really interesting platform, not only for creators, which is what we call them, for the people that do create these videos, but also for brands and clients to really associate themselves and connect with audiences in a very different way. And it's interesting to see, if we go to the next slide, that connection is made in so many different ways. Many of you may have heard about this, but this is a gentleman whose truck broke down on his way to work. He was about to start his shift, Nathan at Pokeda, and also known as Dogface 208, which is his code name. And so he created out of nowhere this wonderful, joyful moment on TikTok where he got on his longboard, he took to the highway on this beautiful smooth tarmac on this beautiful morning as the sun was rising, supping on his cranberry juice from Ocean Spray. And this thing went viral. I mean, phenomenal. 55 million views already, plus, and still counting and going up. But what that did was that inspired, that created some unbelievable creativity. Not only did it help promote, yet again, one of the great songs of all time, Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, but also inspired people to take it a step further. If we go to the next slide, thank you.
Now here you go again, you say you want your freedom.
I mean, he looks so chilled. 55 million people thought so too. But essentially what happened was this then stimulated other creators to do the same. and associate themselves with Nathan in a way that maybe they hadn't explored before on TikTok, cruising on a highway, supping on their Ocean Spray cranberry juice. It also drove Mick Fleetwood to come on for the first time, him and Stevie Nicks, and they connected with their community through their own unique way, again, by sipping on the juice. And then, of course, where would a place be without celebrities? So celebrities have also got on the bandwagon in a weird way to kind of almost celebrate their dog face homage. And then finally, the CEO, even the CEO of Ocean Spray has been on TikTok, has created his own smooth sailing into work. And you know, it really drove an interesting approach to both press and music. Not only has it driven Dreams to be the #1 iTunes track again, it's also on the Billboard charts in the US. It's driven a huge amount of press, and even the Ocean Spray CEO has bought a truck for Nathan as well, to ensure that he doesn't miss work again, even though, you know, it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. In addition to that, what it's done, this trend essentially has also driven huge growth for their business, for Ocean Spray, sold out across all shelves in the US, but also has had an impact on the stock price, and that's begun to climb after this video went out on the 25th of September. So yeah, it does start on TikTok. It can be very, very positive in its sentiment and the connection it makes with users and celebrities and rock stars, but also CEOs and brands as well. And so we'll touch on that a little bit as we work through the next couple of slides before I hand over to Cormac. Next slide. So I am Stuart Flynn, and my job essentially, I have the privilege, and it really is a privilege. I'm so excited to work for this business. It's such a great company to work for. I work for TikTok Europe. I head up the Global Business Solutions, which essentially is the commercial arm of the business. And I've never been more proud to work for a business that has shown such huge growth and potential, but also the communities that are thriving on our platform. Next slide, thank you. And it's those, sorry, there we go. And so, you know, it's those communities that are actually really helping us develop. You know, we have a very clear mission at TikTok, and that is to inspire creativity and bring joy. TikTok is real, it's authentic, it brings a lightness to your life, and it absolutely brings joy. This is a blank canvas for people to be their authentic selves. There is no veneer, there's no gloss. It's not like other platforms where you have to be your very best self and look amazing. People are really happy to do this in their front room or in their garden with the washing in the background. It really doesn't matter. Or even, as I did, dress up as a cheerleader and do a dance move with your kids, which is great and so much fun. And something that only lasts between 15 and 60 seconds can take up to 90 minutes to make because of the joy and the creativeness and the pride that you take in making these videos. And that's I think, a really joyful experience, and certainly a creative experience that we want to bring to our communities, which is what we call them. Next one down, please. And it's these communities and these creators which are essentially the lifeblood of our business. You know, they foster so much diversity, they create new trends, and they make it joyful. I certainly believe that during this lockdown period, I look on TikTok a lot, not only because it's my job, but because I really enjoy the app, and it brings so much fun and joy and positivity, and including communities. And some of which I've seen recently. There was a young woman that had suffered cancer during the lockdown crisis, and she shared through various episodes and chapters on TikTok about her journey going through radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and the outpouring of support that she got from our community on the platform was just immense. And it bridges geographies, it bridges cultures. Language is not a barrier here. This is about connections that you're making through the way that you're creating your short form and joyful content. And for me, that's really, really important. And it connects with people in so many impressive ways. And so brands have this opportunity. If we think and pull this back to marketing, brands have also this opportunity to make that connection and be inclusive and positive about the communities and the people that support their brands in a way that we may not have seen on other platforms before. If we go to the next slide, thanks. So this diversity, of course, creates a diverse platform. And so as we've grown during the pandemic, the audience is growing significantly. We'll come to the numbers in a moment. What happens is that grows the diversity of the individuals that are using the platform. And in turn, what that does is that creates a more diverse type of content that we're seeing. So if you've gone back 12 months, you may have seen a lot of dance videos on there, a lot of people lip syncing to famous pieces of music. The reality is, as we fast forward to today, that demographic has expanded significantly. That allows us as a commercial team to open up to new verticals. Only just recently, we've seen cars take a very active interest in the platform, where brands such as Porsche, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Smart Car, which is part of the Daimler Group, have all got involved in and using TikTok in an authentic way. The Mercedes-Benz ad in itself, or TikTok in itself, didn't show any of the car, but it made a connection that enabled the users, the communities, to get involved and portray the way they feel about that particular brand. And so there's some really interesting ways that brands are doing this, and we'll come to some case studies a bit later on. But just think about the diversity of the type of individuals that we have on there now, and the kind of content that we have. One of my favorites is What About Bunny? If you haven't seen that, go to it. It's basically a giant poodle that uses buttons to communicate to its users. It's the most impressive dog I've ever seen in my life, probably my favorite of all time. And in fact, it asks in long sentences as well, by using these buttons, to go for walks down to the beach and how much it loves its owners. It's the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in my life. But equally, not unlike the cancer patient that we saw, we've seen on the frontline workers, certainly in the UK with the NHS, showing really emotional and emotive content behind the scenes of what's happening on the front line, but equally more light-hearted moments of them collaborating with their colleagues and dancing in the corridors when they're celebrating somebody leaving the hospital after a pretty significant treatment. Next slide, please. So this is about creating personalized interactions, and the discovery piece around, not if you don't want to be a creator, you don't have to be, but it is about you discovering and finding something that really relates to you globally. And I mean that at a global level, where you can relate to a community in all of ways. And so the For You feed is essentially the first thing you see when you open up TikTok. And as you're scrolling through, the algorithm is starting to learn you as an individual and starting to recommend pieces of content that it feels you may like based on your likes, the engagement levels that you're spending and time that you're spending on certain pieces of video, how quickly you flick through, things that you are sharing, all have messages and information that allows us to create a really interesting personalized interaction between you and your app. And so what I will see would be very unique, probably based around Bulldogs, basketball and golf, but that'd be very unique to me and very different from potentially what somebody else will see. So this is a really it's a brilliant platform, an interesting bit of kit that allows you to really discover, be curious, but connect to a global community. And the technology allows you to do that and makes it really, really relevant for you. Next slide, please. And those audiences love it. I mean, it's grown significantly. And so we reached a significant milestone over the last couple of weeks of 100 million monthly active users right across Europe. That's 800 million now users. These are monthly active users globally. These are huge numbers. And so going from, almost an acorn a year ago to where it is today shows you not only well, we're very humble about it, but not only the growth potential in this space, but actually the opportunity to be able to connect and relate to an audience and a community in a way brands maybe didn't think they could in the past. And so this diversity of content has contributed to this growth. This lockdown potentially has significantly allowed us to grow in a humble way. But we've seen this diversification goes hand in hand with the demographics. We're also pleased to say that we are supporting brands. We've employed a number of people now in Europe. There are 2,000 employees that are based at TikTok in Europe, and that's grown exponentially over the last 3 or 4 months. and certainly since I joined on the 30th of March, there were 35 employees in Europe, roughly, out of London, and now there are more than that, let's just say. There are 1,300 that are working across the UK and Ireland as well. So, significant proportion of those are, of course, in very key markets around Europe, including Italy, Germany, France, Spain, and what will be soon the Nordics, as well as Ireland, of course. Sorry, Cormac. Next slide, please. And so our community welcomes not only diverse content, but it also welcomes brands. And so as excited as I think people are to get involved, I think brands should as well. And this is a commitment, this is an ask for them to create. And this community are reaching out to these brands to communicate to them in a way that makes sense to them within this environment, make it feel very native, make it feel very authentic, and in a way can be quite raw. It doesn't have to be the polished brand that we might see on other platforms or other media formats. This can be something really, really special. And we'll come on to some examples in a moment about how we do just that. But if you think about the initiative that we've driven recently of don't make ads, make TikToks, that I think signifies the way you should definitely think about your brand when you're relating to this community in this environment. Because a brand, a 20-second, 30-second TV ad won't necessarily, it may, but it won't necessarily work in this environment if it's not cut in the right way. And so this is a chance for, I think, creatives, but certainly for brands to think about how they're producing their content in order to relate and capture the essence of TikTok in an environment that relates really well to users and allows them to click and be interested and be curious about your brand even more. Next slide, please. So don't make ads, make TikToks, sorry, is the campaign. And it really does change your approach. And I'll show you one in a moment, a Gucci ad, and we'll show you that example. But just to give some context around that, the Gucci ad in itself was based out of Italy. And it was, as you would expect a Gucci campaign to be, these wonderful, slightly older women, actually, they're in their 80s, wearing these wonderful, huge coats and brilliant sneakers in bright Gucci clothing. And they're sitting outside this Italian cafe sipping on, coffee. And so it's a beautifully shot, veneered, glossy ad you'd expect to see from Gucci. And the TikTok version of that was almost the aftermath of the shoot. And it was the ladies getting up from their chairs and doing a little dance and almost being accidentally, relating themselves to TikTok in a way that maybe a glossy ad doesn't do. And so we'll share that content with you in a moment. But it doesn't have to be about the big brands. And this is the point about this campaign, which is really driven towards not only the larger brands and clients, but also some of the small to medium-sized businesses as well. And we've had various successes with working with slightly smaller brands that can absolutely make a big difference and impact on this platform just by creating TikToks. A good example quickly before I move on is a friend of mine has a very small cycling apparel business, so cycling clothing, very passionate about his company. It's not particularly big. He uses social networks to communicate his messaging through photography. But how does he make a TikTok? And so we work together, and he's got a number of pieces of footage of him climbing these mountains and Alpe d'Huez, for example, in the Alps. And it's the final 200 meters, and he's wearing his new kit. And he's then overlaid that with some emotive music, because the music is the golden thread on TikTok. It's the emotion that kind of draws you in. It's the soundtrack to your campaign. And so by placing that emotive music onto this last 200 meters as he's climbing up, he's sweating, but he's so passionate about it. And that brought to life, if you like, his brand. It brought to life his passion, but it also allowed him to communicate the type of clothing that he's wearing and where you can buy that from. So don't think ads, don't think veneer, don't think glossy, think TikToks, and think of a way that you can do that. And we can really help support you in that as a business. We can use our best working practices to show you how to do just that. And we have the tools available that allow you to deliver KPIs and performance campaigns to great effect. So reach out to us if you want to, and we can show you more of that. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so, how do you create? Well, there are a number of ways you can do that. You can create your own TikTok, of course, but also you can reach out to us and we can start introducing you to creators themselves. And so we have a network of creators and a platform where we can match the correct creator to your brand based on your needs and wants, whether it's the size of their audience, whether it's the type of individual that they are. And we can make those connections for you and introduce creators. Now, the important thing is that each of the brand and the creator have to sign a contract to say that they are absolutely signing up to policies that this is advertising, because obviously there's a very gray area between influence marketing and ads. So this is an ad campaign that they're signing up for. And so both the brand or the client work with the creator to produce something, what we would call for example, a hashtag challenge, more of that in a second, that can help influence and drive other creators to create their own version of that commercial, so to speak. So quality of content beats through on followers. Think about using your sound. I mentioned that about that being the soundtrack of your campaign. It's really important to almost let yourself go a little bit, be creative, be bold, make it really simple, but definitely make it fun, and bring elements of your brand to life that you may not have done before. If you think a Guinness ad is a really good example. If you think Guinness and the horses, the iconic horses ad, if they're coming out of the wave on the surfers ad that was on television, how would you recreate that on TikTok? Would you do that in a bath with horses, for example? I mean, there are so many different ways that you kind of explore creativity. And so leveraging not only your own ideas, but your own internal business and your creators that you have internally and community you have internally in your company, but also help us leverage some of the creators that we've got available to you that you can work with and really build your brand out. Next slide, please. So this is the Gucci ad that I was telling you about, and so I'll just let this one play if that's all right. For some reason, one of my favorites, because you can imagine how beautifully shot that was with all the photographers and the lighting around them outside that cafe. But they kind of stood up and said, let's just quickly do a TikTok. It probably took them about, I'm guessing that would have only taken them a couple of takes. So it probably would have taken about 10 minutes to create a TikTok. And yet that campaign had such an impact on our platform, and the number of clicks through to either make purchase or comments was immense. And so the community really leans into that type of approach. Hopefully that's a really good example of how that has worked really well. So with regards to the ad products, essentially there are 4 ad products that you can buy on TikTok. And there are 2 ways for you to buy. The first way you buy is what we call reserved. So if you think branding, you would phone us up or send us an email with a brief, and we would help answer your brief. We'd help you solve your complex business challenges. And so reservation is one way that you can buy ads for us, by talking to our sales team, for example, or sending us an email. The second way, and second only way, is the auction. So you can bid in our auction, if you like, on impressions, on the audience that you're looking to capture. And you can set the parameters on the dashboard, either on a self-serve or via us on a managed service. The only ad format that you can buy an auction or performance campaign through is via the in-feed video. So very quickly, I'm going to touch on each of those 4 areas. The first is top view. Top view is the first ad that you will see when you come into TikTok. It's the opening ad that you see when you enter the app. It's full screen vertical, sound on, really, really important. So sound on straight away, that emotion gathers you straight away. And it's an ultimate branding opportunity for you to kind of get straight away onto the For You feed. The second is the in-feed. And this is about storytelling in a video ad natively platform. And so that's embedded in the For You feed. That's that feed I talked to you about, the one that's relevant to you, the one that's designed itself around your likes. And so it's designed to give users the chance to engage with your brand and make it accountable through these clickable elements and to increase conversions. So it's very much kind of a performance-based opportunity. The next is HTC, or hashtag challenge, as we call it. And this is about creating a unique call to action for video creation and creating what we believe to be a very joyful concept that aligns with your brand around your personality. And that can be something that you've created yourself or working with creators. And I'll show you some examples of a hashtag challenge in a moment. And then the final one is the branded effects. And so branded effects means that creators, not adapters, they can use the branded effects that you've created and ultimately play with your brand in a way they've not done before. And so it gives the communities the tools to really look at your franchise in a very different way by using branded effects within their own environments, whether that's a hat company, for example, or some glasses like Specsavers, where you can actually put them on to see what they look like using a branded effect. And so these special effects, if you like, allow us to create a good consistency and a really good feel, and encourage really creative thinking for CMOs, for creators, for advertisers and brands to interact with their audience in a very different way on a mobile platform. Next slide, please. And so here's a really good example of Pringles, which ran as a hashtag challenge in Germany, Italy, and France. And clearly what happens here is this is an opportunity to work with a creator that has created a way to interact with your Pringles in a different way, and making it fun and to great effect. So what happens is, as these creators almost find out a way that they can eat their Pringles in a different way, that then becomes quite viral, where others are interacting and saying, well, how do I eat my Pringles in a different way? Well, the results speak for themselves. And so over 1 billion video views, a 30% average engagement rate, and the videos that were created at the back end of that hashtag challenge were nearly 350,000 videos at the back of all of those views. So you're not only getting people viewing and engaging your brand in a different way, 1 billion of them to be exact, but also they're interacting by creating their own version of your commercial by using that hashtag challenge, which can easily be found on the discovery page within the app. So think differently about your brand. Think about the way that you can interact with the communities involved and get them to be ambassadors of your brand. And that's the important thing for Pringles. Next slide, please. So similarly, and interestingly, a Lancaster University is a really good example of how they've done that so well. How do you essentially attract people to come to your university? Well, you interact with an audience that really care about their education. And so that's exactly what they did. Using TikTok, of course. And so using in-feed to drive interest for their education and courses at Lancaster University, we saw over 10 million impressions of people viewing the content and over 9 million engagements or comments. And that's views, that's likes, that's comments that they're making. So at that 10 million, only 1 million of those dropped off, so to speak, or weren't interested in necessarily going to university. But I mean, these phenomenal results show you that the engagement levels and interactions that you can create on full screen, sound on, and either get them to create on your behalf or get them to interact and really draw them in through the use of emotive music. Back to our ocean spray example right at the start. Just one thing can really generate interest in 55 million followers, which is absolutely incredible. But we don't just build our platform on great content. It's also built and created on a platform that allows people to be their expressive selves and allows people to feel safe and allow them to be authentic. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Cormac Keenan, who will talk you through why it's a platform that's so important to us and a bedrock of safety to make these people feel very safe in what they're doing in the way that they create. Over to you, Cormac.
Thank you, Flinty. I think my video might be off, but okay, there we go, perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is, as Flinty mentioned, my name is Cormac, and I'm coming to you from a very windy Dublin, so my apologies if there's windows rattling behind me as I speak through this. I think the weather is reflecting our mood as a nation as we face another 6-week lockdown starting on Wednesday. But luckily we have TikTok to help us to get through our lockdown phase 2. As you can see from the screen, my role is the head of the trust and safety team for our EMEA region, which usually means that I spend most of my time in meetings talking to people about some of the most difficult content or some of the more difficult types of experiences that people have. And we're working on producing strategies and policies to counteract that. So it's great to be here today to talk to you about a lot of the work that we do and to try and shed a bit of light on some of the efforts that we have in place. So next slide, please. So as Flinty just mentioned, keeping users safe really is one of our top priorities, and we don't just say that. From the top of the company down, we are committed to doing that, and I think it's evident in a lot of the safety strategies that we have. So we do strive to be the most transparent and accountable company in the industry when it comes to how we're keeping our users safe. And through this, we really do want to make sure that we create a trusted environment for brands built on that foundation of safety and transparency. So this doesn't just allow us to further our mission. A positive in-app environment is also beneficial for brands that choose to advertise with us. So we're committed to protecting brands from appearing next to objectionable content. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk to you today about the kind of 4 strands of how we think about building and managing a safe platform for all of our users. And essentially we break this into 4 sections. We've got our policies and the controls that we have in place for users, the technology and people that are really at the core of what we do, the product and how we try to build safety into it, and then all the education and partnerships that that we do with people across the region, because obviously there are a number of different safety organizations and experts that go very deep on specific subject matter areas that we rely on and we want to engage heavily with to make sure that we're using their insight and influence to build our policies and build our detection and enforcement strategies in a way that are evolving with the platform and the behavior around us. So first up, our policies and controls. So firstly, TikTok is an app for people 13 years of age and up. Our terms of service specify 13 plus, but we do follow local laws, meaning that if in certain jurisdictions the law requires a higher age, we will follow that law in that jurisdiction. We want to make sure we've got control at the device level. So we have a 12 plus app store or Google Play rating, which allows parents to control the type of content that can be downloaded to their kids, to their children's devices. Users can report underage accounts to us, and we will follow up and make sure that we're investigating these accounts. If moderators detect an underage user, we will take action. In the US, we've implemented a limited age-appropriate app experience with additional safety and privacy protections. And we are continuing to enforce and drive our strategy for making sure we're protecting users across all age spectrums. Next slide, please. When it comes to safety controls, it's really important that people feel that they have the power to control their own experience. And this is an area that we have invested heavily in and will continue to invest heavily in. We want to make sure that users feel empowered to control their own safety experience. So some examples of the types of things you can do within the product. Firstly, things like direct messages. You can disable direct messages, or you can choose to receive them from friends only. You can control who can view your videos or interact with them in a duet, for example. Comment filters. So if you don't want to see particular words or phrases, you can block these from being posted on your videos. Obviously, we encourage people and have the ability and facility for every video to be reported to us, and we will take the utmost seriousness in responding and reviewing those reports when we receive them. And you may have seen us through the kind of mid to late part of the summer. We were launching family pairing, which allows parents to attach or to kind of join their teens account and can provide some sort of parental controls for how their teens are using their app. So providing these safety controls is a fundamental and of paramount importance, and an area that we will continue to iterate and invest in. The community guidelines. So for us, the community guidelines really are the heartbeat, the center of our safety strategy, and they define the rules essentially of what is and what is not allowed on our platform. And we want them, and we believe they do, embody our values as a company. We think about these in terms of a holistic approach, meaning we don't write these in a vacuum. We do take into account cultural and social norms. We do consult with external stakeholders and experts to gain a variety of perspectives and also to comply with local laws. Our values, they do form the foundation of our community guidelines. We remove content that includes video, audio, image, kind of text like comments that violate our community guidelines. And we do suspend, or in extreme scenarios, we will ban accounts involved in kind of high severity violations, or in fact repeated violations. And in certain circumstances, we will even go one step further and report accounts to relevant legal or law enforcement authorities to keep our communities safe. Sorry, flick back one more second. Sorry, we expanded our community guidelines in January of this year, and that will be an iterative process. The types of behavior that we see and the types of rules that we're writing is evolving with the platform. It's evolving with the external environment. So we will continue to do that. So for example, during the summer, we introduced new policies around countering misinformation and disinformation. And we're also introducing fact-checking programs to help us to verify misleading content about things like coronavirus and elections that are happening across the world. Next slide, please. So these are the main categories that we have within our community guidelines. And you can see them from 1 to 10 in terms of how they're laid out. As I mentioned, we continue to iterate and evolve these categories as we go deeper in certain areas, as we work with external parties, and as we prioritize the need to do so. Beneath all of these are a wide range of enforcement guidelines that we provide and work with our moderators and our teams to turn these kind of high-level guidelines into enforcement actions. Because if you think about our challenge really is, how do we turn what the guidelines are, which if you go to the community guidelines on our website, you'll be able to see them in detail, but how do we turn them into enforcement actions for thousands of people across the world to enforce consistently and to a high degree of effectiveness? So for example, if we think about hate speech, defining hate speech and talking about it at a high level is something that we're making sure that we're doing, and we're providing that clarity, but turning that into an enforcement guideline for someone who's looking at content coming from the UK versus content coming from Germany versus content coming from a different part of the world, we need to make sure that we're providing our moderators with a level of understanding of what this means so we can enforce with accuracy and confidence. Next slide, please. So I just mentioned our moderators and what we're doing to provide them with the context that they need. Our moderation team is in the thousands, and it spans across the globe. We've covering 45 languages and growing. This kind of spread of a global team allows us to take swift action when users report content to us. We do make sure that we remove content that violates our guidelines, and the geographical distribution of our team means that we're able to utilize local cultural context and local understanding to influence and drive the enforcement that we provide for the different kind of community guidelines that we have. So it's a really important part of our enforcement strategy are the people that are at the core of a lot of the work that we do. But as well as our people, we do need to rely on technology. It's very much part of the same process. If we don't have strong technology that helps us to detect content, we can spend the time that these people in our moderation teams have potentially on content that isn't necessarily violating. So, and while we have a very engaged community and we have a lot of users who love to use TikToks, sometimes what we can find is when we rely on purely user reports, and I think this is consistent with other companies, sometimes reports from our users can be misleading, or they may not point to the real heart of the problem. I know in other companies, some of the more high profile reporting pages that were reported most often were football teams or different types of music artists, for example, which people just didn't like. So what we want to do is make sure that we're using proactive detection technology to really identify what we believe to be the highest signal or the highest chance of violating content for our moderators to review. So we do have a multi-tiered moderation process that uses machine learning technology, human review, and user reporting. Our safety classifiers and deep learning models work proactively to identify harmful content, and we're continuously iterating and influencing and building on these machine learning models. We have round-the-clock moderation that then reviews these reports as they're coming through, and we make sure that we have ML, or we have AI that ensures the highest probability of violating content, or in fact the highest potential for high severity content is sent to our moderation teams first, so they can review that as an urgent priority. And then we have other models that detect things like hate symbols that are sent to our moderators for further review. We then also have at the top end of the funnel the bottom end of the funnel on the far right of the slide, you'll see issue-specific abuse team. These are highly specialized groups of individuals who focus on specific issue abuse areas. For example, hate speech versus adult nudity and sexual activity, for example. So these are teams that go really, really deep on these specific areas and are able to provide that highly skilled and highly skilled expertise if required. On my first slide, I spoke about our goal to kind of build trust with users and brands through transparency. One element of that is through our transparency report, where we are on a regular basis posting on our website metrics that show the effect of our enforcement strategies. So our transparency report started with the view of numbers related to requests that we receive from governments and is being expanded with each iteration to provide more insight into our content moderation efforts. In the most recent report, we shared details of our detection efforts, where we spoke about over 96% of the videos that were deemed to be violating and removed were done so before any user reported them to us. From that 96%, over 90% were removed before they received any views on our platform. And in the US, we got to close to 92% of these violating videos were removed in less than 24 hours. We will continue to increase the transparency of our efforts, providing more regional insight, more regional data, as we iterate and share more of these transparency reports in the future. We're very proud of our safety education efforts. I don't know if people are aware, but within the app itself, within TikTok, we have safety videos that are very much like TikTok look and feel, and they do seem to resonate very strongly with young people. So for example, we've got screen time management. So if people are using the app for a certain period of time, a TikTok video will come into your feed, encouraging you to think about managing your screen time. We've also got things like how to use the report button or how to stay positive online. So these are all things that we're making sure that we're continuing to build on and provide these TikTok look and feel ways of learning and of growing awareness of our safety strategies. We've also added in-app educational public service announcements on hashtags related to important topics that we see happening across the public discourse. So such as, you may have seen this around COVID-19 or around the coronavirus, things like Black Lives Matter and harmful conspiracies. We will provide these little banners at the bottom of a video just to help people understand where to go to understand more detail about these particular topics. And my last slide is just as I spoke earlier about the last piece of the puzzle in terms of our four corners is around partnerships and working with these external experts. So we work with industry experts, with NGOs and industry associations around the world, actually, to make sure we're building a safe platform for users. So the growing list of partners, you can see from this list, we're working with people like Connect Safely, the PTA. We help promote the messages of these experts. For example, we had a PSA on media literacy with the National Association for the Media Literacy Education. We're also continuing to work with external experts in building safety councils around the world. So we've got one up and running in the US, we've got one up and running in APAC, and we'll continue to roll these out across our region to make sure that we're working with highly credible and knowledgeable experts in helping us to define our safety strategy and our policies. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's the kind of meat of my slides.
Thank you so much, Cormac. I'm just going to bring Flinty back and start his video. So we've got a few questions that have come through, but I thought before we do that, I've just got a few questions that I just would like to ask you, just expanding a bit on your presentation. And I thought that was such a comprehensive overview. And then it was great just to see the safety area. Firstly, I think we can all agree 2020 has been an extraordinary year. Cormac, I'm sorry to hear you're having to go through it all again with a second lockdown. But I think with obviously the early stages of pandemic, we did see that TikTok amassed a huge amount of followers, and you recently announced that you've got now over 100 million monthly active users. So I just wanted to find a bit more about what do you think is behind that kind of sudden growth and that engagement with your community.
Yeah, I'll take this if that's all right, Cormac. I think that growth has really come from that authenticity piece that we talked about. I think there's a feeling that it's a lot more fun to be yourself. And so, Cormac talked about, creating this safe platform, and, the idea that people can be expressive. It could be done anywhere. It could be done in your, as I say, in your front room, your kitchen, your garden. It could be done with Dame, a famous grandma, for example, which is what we've seen recently, and or your kids. And so, what's happened since lockdown is not only have we seen it from this kind of very evolving young platform, but we've seen it evolve into this platform where it encompasses everybody in the family that are together during this tough time. And so it allows them to explore and have fun together. And I think that's what's really driven this in a way that we haven't seen before. That diversity of both audience and content that's enabled us to kind of grow the way we have. I don't know if
Actually, it's interesting that you hit on that, the kind of the sudden change in the younger demographics. And I know that famous grandmother you are talking about with her grandson. And I think that's been so lovely to see families doing the little challenges, and it's not embarrassing to have your dad or your mum there. So obviously with this now growth of the audience, how have you seen brands adapting to this kind of more diverse age range or amongst the community?
I think I sort of touched on it. It's definitely opened up new verticals for us as we've started to get slightly older. So Kantar just did some recent research of individuals that are over the age of 18. It was 63% of individuals that are over the age of 18 now, which is great. And so the idea is that it doesn't feel like a young demographic anymore. That it does feel like you can relate to a much older demographic. But the content change has been dramatic. Educational pieces are on there. I mean, there was a favorite one of mine, which is it was about whittling wood. It was amazing. This man had this huge log, and then he just kind of carved away at it over weeks, showed you different chapters of him on TikTok, and then to this beautiful sculpture. And so, it's those types of pieces of content now that I think are appealing to not just the young, but certainly the wider demographic, which I think is great. And I love it.
So Cormac, just coming on to you, obviously with all of this growth, I'm sure you're busy day and night because it brings on extra responsibility. And you touched on kind of like the areas that you're going down, but how are you keeping? What are the kind of the top 3 things that you're doing to keep, I guess, people and brands safe on your platform?
Yeah, obviously the last 6 months have been quite unbelievable in terms of the level of growth for the platform, which from my perspective, obviously brings its own challenges, right, in terms of the types of content that we're seeing, but it doesn't necessarily change our strategy, because that's something we've had in place for a long time. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's an integral part of how we're approaching building this platform. So I think one of the first things is obviously around our policies and making sure that we're evolving the policies that we have on the platform to the usage that we're seeing and to the type of content that's getting posted. It's the policies are at the center of everything, right? They drive everything in our enforcement detection and our enforcement strategies across the board. So that's the first thing. We then want to make sure that we're continuing to innovate on the controls that we provide people. I mentioned a few of those in the presentation, but there's lots more that we can do, and there's lots more that we will do to make sure that we're giving people the controls and the ability to manage their own experience. And then we want to make sure that we're continuing to drive and be seen to be a leader in terms of transparency and sharing why we're doing what we're doing. So again, I talked about our transparency report, but we'll also be looking to do much more around providing a greater level of insight so people can understand what we're trying to do and give us the feedback that we need to hear, right? The world that we live in and the world that I'm trying to work within is constantly evolving. It's very hard to stay ahead of, but we want to understand where our gaps are so we can try to make sure that we're putting the right strategies in place to manage that.
Perfect. Yeah. And just in terms, I opened today's session and talked about creator marketing. What can you tell me? We hear the rest of the industry talking about influencer marketing. So is there a difference between the two? And do you think that we are kind of moving on from influencer marketing to this new area of content, of creator marketing?
I think we could come up with another different buzzwords. I think it's essentially, influencer marketing is nothing new. It's always been there, whether it's, brand placement or, that's a form of influencer marketing on television. There's a Diet Coke on the front of Simon Cowell's desk, as he's doing X Factor, for example. That's influencer marketing in a lot of ways. I think the key here is less around our creators are helping brands to connect with an audience in a different way that feels familiar to them. That's the most important thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is identifying that it's an ad. And so, especially amongst that younger demographic, it's really important we identify that this is truly an advertisement, and it will say advertisement at the top of the page. That's been really, really clear, and we've been very, very strict with the guidelines and the policies that we've set, making sure that both parties sign up to those policies to ensure they know it's both advertising that they're getting involved in, and also the fact that when we display the commercial or the TikTok, it is clearly displayed as an advertisement. And so there's no gray area between influencer marketing or creator marketing and what is truly an advert. So that's really important that we do that. And we've been working, I know, with the IAB and also with a number of different organizations to do just that, to protect those young individuals.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've realized we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. First of all, is TikTok advertising available in Serbia? And if not, do you have information when it will be?
It's not at the moment, I'm afraid. I just had a quick scour through our list of countries. It seems to be everywhere but Serbia at the moment, but that's not to say it won't be. I think we're in growth mode right now. I think we're being incredibly humble about the way that we're growing. We're trying to be, we'd love to be in Serbia as quickly as possible. I think you can potentially receive TikToks, but you won't be able to advertise at this point. But it may be something in the future, but I don't have visibility on that at this point. I'm sorry.
That's okay. As soon as you do, we will post that up. And then someone has asked here, can you tell me a bit more about TikTok shopping options and what you're planning there?
Yeah, well, I think...
Is that top secret, Flinty?
Yeah, so some of it is. I think, look, we're evolving, aren't we, as a platform? And I think there's a definite opportunity here for e-commerce. Right now, we can deliver a solution that allows people to make purchase of products, of course, as long as it's clearly identified as an ad. And so if you're putting a TikTok commercial up, there's clickable advantages to pushing buttons that allow people to make a purchase of that product. That's the first and basic level. I think as e-commerce starts to evolve on our platform, we'll be introducing new ways of being able to connect with the audience and allow them to make those purchases and therefore the retail experience will definitely shift and change over time. That's what I'm prepared to say at this point, but we're still in an early phase, but watch this space.
Okay, nice. I was going to say, yeah, e-commerce is very big opportunity. So actually, this now is just looking a bit about the metrics. So the question here is saying, are you seeing brands use the platform for traditional brand building metrics or more the DR performance based? What kind of split are you seeing?
So right now, DR is about 60% of our revenue and the 40% is reserved. The key, I think, is using both. So having a very clear brand opportunity, whether it's on a top view, that first ad that I talked about, that full page, full screen, vertical sound on, and utilizing tactically some of the in-feed performance-based advertising, which can really complement and benefit both. So we'd recommend both. Of course we would, but the split is fairly equal. The split is fairly equal right now as we're moving through. And I think as we start to again evolve as an advertising platform, I think you'll find that things will start to change slightly as well. So, but right now we'd recommend both, and on those recommendations, it seems to have a positive effect.
Brilliant. And this is, I think we've definitely got some measurement people on here today, because I've got another question that's just asking about video views. Yeah. And just is that how many seconds? I'm sure we can send information. 3 seconds. 3 seconds is right. Yeah. So we're in line with the compliance around the industry now, and ensuring that it's not just a video view is not just a quick impression or a first impression. It has to be on for a minimum of 3 seconds. Great. And then do you have any standout campaigns that you've seen this year that other brands could take inspiration from?
Of
I know
the-
you've presented a big array, and obviously the Gucci one was fantastic.
Yeah, Gucci I love. Do you know what? Subway. I'll let Cormac might, because he sees an awful lot about something, or certainly pieces of content. But I think Subway did something really interesting recently. It was about how you eat your sub, a really simple hashtag. How do you eat your sub? And so we introduced a creator to Subway. They worked on the brief together, and it went into the millions and millions of views, and people creating their version of how they eat their 6-inch or their 12-inch sub. And it's so simple, but so brilliant and so much fun. And certainly during lockdown, the way you eat your sandwich is really quite interesting. And I can tell you, people are very creative. But it's brilliant. It was so much fun. And I think that's a really good campaign of how to connect with your audience and get interaction at the same time.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're actually out of time there. So just before we go, I'm going to ask you both. So Flinty, you did say that you have created your video. Cormac, actually, have you done a TikTok yet? And if so, what's been your best performing one?
Before I answer that question, I did want to kind of say to Donna, who I know in the Q&A it feels like experiencing a difficult issue with TikTok. So Donna, I'll make sure that we will connect directly with you so we can help. It's obviously a difficult thing, so I'll make sure that we connect offline and understand more in that particular problem you're experiencing. I have created TikToks. I'll be very honest. I've created them for my family and for myself at this point in time. I haven't taken that big step to share publicly yet. I'm still trying to fine tune my dancing skills, but my kids and myself are having a great time trying to make sure that we're up to speed with all the latest dance crazes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Cormac. Thank you so much, Flinty, for joining us today. As mentioned, this has been recorded. We'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone so that you can get access to the deck and some of the case studies. And we wish you a very good afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.